Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Clar8ty product webinar that happens the first Wednesday of each month. Michelle Anton here, and I want to take a moment to introduce today's host, Chris Neville. He has more than 25 years experience developing nutritional products, and he's the Vice President of Product Development for Clar8ty and the mastermind behind Clar8ty's flagship nutritional drink called Calibrate. And if you're new to Clar8ty, it's a cutting-edge bioenergetic wellness company. And before I turn the webinar over to Chris Neville, I do want to let you know that today he's going to tap into the fascinating mind of Glen Rein, Ph.D. Dr. Glen is a powerhouse in the industry, and over the past couple of decades, he's pursued an academic career in traditional biomedical research at prestigious institutions such as Harvard and Stanford medical schools, where he studied neuroscience, immunology, psychoneuroimmunology, and bioelectromagnetics. Hey, Chris. Take it away.
Well, thanks very much, Michelle, for a fabulous introduction. And it's truly a great privilege to have Dr. Glen Rein on the call with us today. And I'm looking forward to sharing not just some understanding about Resonate as a product, but really for you to understand a little bit more about why it is that we should be paying attention to the need for a product like Resonate. And one of the first things that we wanted to introduce to you is the idea that the universe doesn't speak words. It doesn't speak English, it doesn't speak French, and it certainly doesn't speak, well, American. It actually speaks frequency. And so when we look at health and well-being, we've got to take a look at our broader environment, not just about our nutritional intake and our activity, but also the other invisible arenas that also impact our body. Dr. Glen, could you comment about the idea of frequency and its applicational impact on our health?
Well, there's $1 million question. Hi, everybody. Glad to be here, and hope I can help explain some of these things at a non-technical level. So when we're talking frequency, frequency means it's a property of an electromagnetic field or of a sound wave or of a light wave. In the case of light, they call it wavelength, not frequency, but they're really the same thing. So the frequency just refers to the speed that the energy oscillates, in essence. And certain frequencies turn out to be harmful to the body, and other frequencies are beneficial to the body. So that's why it's confusing to the consumer, because, well, I hear that this device is supposed to heal you, and it's all about electromagnetic frequencies, and then you hear about the cell phones, and everyone's talking about harmful frequencies. So that's the point there, is that all these electronic devices that we're talking about emit different kinds of energies with many different kinds of frequencies. And in the case of the cell phones, unfortunately, the net sum of all of the different energies that are involved with a cell phone are harmful. And in the case of power lines, the electricity in our homes, which is actually predominantly 60 hertz in this country and 50 hertz in Europe, turns out both of those frequencies are harmful. So the problem is that the industry that makes the devices, they don't think about the health aspects of the energy they're generating. They just think about the functionality of the product they're building.
That's a really great comment there, Dr. Glen, because, you know, in real terms, what we're doing is we're advancing as a society with the introduction of some, you know, very convenient technologies. There's no question about that. We all enjoy the cell phone and perhaps even the remote control computers or otherwise, but the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences got this fabulous little diagram that explains about the electromagnetic spectrum. Most people can see the colored rainbow area there. That's the visible spectrum that most people are familiar with. But it's really the invisible spectrum that is so broad, and the implications for health, and I call it the hidden menace, the implications for health are really starting to become more apparent. Now, from what I understand as well, is that, you know, it's this invisible arena that's really causing a lot of the background disturbance. Can you maybe comment about how some of these different frequencies impact the body?
So the first thing we need to understand about this diagram is that the horizontal axis there, these numbers with 10 to whatever, are frequencies. So we're talking about, from the left is a very low frequency and the right is very high frequency. And the light, you can see, is kind of in the middle. And the point being here that each of these different bands of the electromagnetic spectrum, that's what they're called, bands, has a different frequency, and some of them are harmful and some of them are beneficial. We all know, for example, in the far right, to the right of the visible, is the X-rays. Well, we all know that X-rays are harmful. And, you know, then we don't really have time to go into each of these bands, but there's a lot of science behind the biological effects and potential harmful effects of all of these different frequencies.
Right. So when we look at the introduction of, I'm just going to move along here. One of the areas that we first tapped on was the idea that we are in a generational shift into the electrification of the home, where we've got a device after device that's coming in. And you mentioned about, you know, the different power that's used in Europe or the USA. But it's really the fact that we're carrying devices around today more than ever before. And I just want to do a kind of a bit of a preface, because some of the early research that I was first introduced to was in regard to the space program. In fact, when the astronauts and cosmonauts first left the Earth's magnetic field, it was an educational moment, because there is a relationship between the Earth's energetic field and the human energetic field, or what we refer to as the bioenergetic field. And these images here are, in fact, cosmonauts, not astronauts, but they were on the Mir space station, or now the International Space Station. And the cosmonaut is using a device where he's got a probe on the end of his little finger, and it measures the conductivity, or the movement of energy through a particular meridian. So you can see on the right-hand side, the traditional Chinese medicine have got meridians or energy pathways. And what they found is that when the astronauts and cosmonauts were going into space, that this energetic flow was disturbed or disrupted. And using the flow chart to the right of where the meridians have been understood for thousands of years, they were able to correlate organ dysfunction as a result of the disturbance. And so on a daily basis, the way to measure and monitor health status in space was to make sure that the body was sufficiently modulated, or the meridian was balanced at any given time as well, so that it wasn't overly stimulated or it wasn't under functioning or sedated as well, because the energetic field of the body is critical to health. So at a physical level, Dr. Glen, could you maybe share why the disturbance of, let's say, the electrical activity in the body is so critically important, particularly when we think of the heart and the brain and the nervous system? They all use electricity. There's bioelectric circuitry, or bioelectricity that really happens in the body. Can you comment about that?
Of course, I can comment on that, but due to our time limitations, I can't say a lot about it. But let's see. So, fundamentally, we're talking about when you say the heart and the brain. Those are called excitable cells. They're electrically excitable. It means that the primary energy that they work on is electrical energy. Other cells that are excitable work on other kinds of energies. And in fact, all of the cells in the body work on different types of energies. And exactly how those energies affect the physiology and the biochemistry is something that is still being worked on, and particularly in reference to the problem that different frequencies will have different effects. In fact, you can change the frequency, not a lot. I mean, we're talking now within one of those bands that we saw on the previous slide. So if we're talking about infrared, for example, well, infrared is a form of light. Well, there's 3 sub-bands, and the frequencies are, again, now just being studied to show that far infrared, for example, is very beneficial, whereas mid-infrared is less beneficial. So the research is now being studied, and we don't know the whole answer to that question. But the point that Chris, I think, is trying to make here for the general audience is that the energy fields of the body act as an intermediate between the energy in the environment and the biochemistry in the body, because we know the electromagnetic fields in the body regulate and control biochemical processes. So this energy field Chris is talking about is our bridge between the outside environment, and particularly if it's an energetic environment, and our own physiology.
Fabulous. So in real terms, you know, the introduction of some of the books, and in fact also movies that have been introduced in the last number of years, are all saying similar things, and that is that electricity may not necessarily be harmonious to the body, or the electromagnetic radiation from different devices or technologies. And there's a growing body of research, I know, with Fritz Albert Popp at the Max Planck Institute, says that he believes that cells actually can communicate with flashes of light, and that these cells radiate photons, and it's kind of a language. I call it the internet instead of the internet. And so the technologies that can actually measure this field emission that will tell the state of the body, like the GDV, which is the bottom image here, can show the image on the left where there is disruption to the energetic flow in the body, and it will show up in a particular way. Or when the energy is better balanced, there's a level of coherence or flow as well. So I guess in real terms, what we're looking at is a way of understanding, as in the second point that on the presentation here that Dr. Glen just mentioned, our body's biochemistry is a massive system of sound, light, and information, internally and externally regulated. And so to enhance wellness at a physical level, we've also got to pay attention to the external environment and its impact on the energetic fields as well. Is there anything you want to add to that, Dr. Glen?
Well, what you're talking here about is an energy which is light energy. And as I said earlier, there are many different kinds of energies. And now we know, for example, that light energy also, in addition to electrical energy, is very important for the function of brain cells and muscle cells and heart cells. So this kind of research is new, very exciting. It was pioneered by scientists in Germany. And the kind of light that we're talking about are called biophotons, because they're very different than ordinary photons that make up the light in your flashlight or even the light in your house. And one of the interesting properties of these biophotons is that they're highly coherent and organized and ordered, even more so than a laser beam, which is considered the classic example of a coherent light energy.
Fantastic. So when we talk of QSET, or quantum signature enhancement technology, in real terms, it's the bioscalar enhancement of our product. You've obviously worked with Dr. Sandra Rose Michael, who invented this particular technology, and she's on the advisory board, as we know, but we introduced it into what we refer to as Resonate, one of our fabulous products. It's a white jade medallion. You can put it in your pocket, carry it. You can certainly wear it as a necklace or a medallion. Put it under your pillow while you sleep, but you can also use it in multiple locations with food and water, or even placing it directly on a pain-affected area. Now, you've done some research on the Resonate as well. Could you maybe just share a little bit what's scalar energy, and why should I be even interested in knowing about it?
That's a great question, especially for most of the audience who probably have not heard the word scalar, although, of course, hopefully everyone's up to par with the terminology we've been using so far, electromagnetic energy, sound energy, and stuff. Well, scalar energy is just a kind of energy where the subtle aspects of the energy are emphasized. So every kind of energy field that we've been talking about so far has a gross energy and a subtle energy associated with it. And the gross energy can be called a force field because it literally exerts force on an object and can move an object. It could certainly move an electron, but it can also move other larger objects. And in addition to that, we have the subtle energy, which is more like a potential field where the energy hasn't yet manifest. So ordinary electromagnetic fields have both, but scalar energy is an energy which changes the ratio of the two so that the underlying subtle energy predominates and the force fields are less, very much weaker, if not present at all. So then why are we interested in this? Well, okay, well, this kind of energy is more fundamental than electromagnetic energy that normally runs the body. The electricity in the nerves and the muscles is very strong energy. It's a forceful energy. But in addition, the body has these subtle energies or scalar energies. So the approach here is to enhance the natural subtle energies in your body, because the subtle energies control the gross energies and the gross electromagnetic energies control the biochemistry. So we're working at healing the body at a much more fundamental level. And the way we're doing that in this particular product is by imbuing the product, which is a crystal. It's a kind of crystal structure, and these crystalline lattices can store the energy of any kind of energy field that they're exposed to, whether it's an electromagnetic field or whether it's a scalar energy. So what we're doing is we're loading this crystal up with this subtle energy, which is the most fundamental energy. Well, it's a very fundamental energy. And then exposing the body to this energy so that it can be converted into ordinary electromagnetic energy and then have a beneficial effect on the physiology and biochemistry.
Fantastic. So really, it goes back to, if you can harmonize the energetic field of the body, then you can actually affect the physical and function. Would that be accurate?
That's a great way to put it. Harmonize is a great word, because what happens is that this underlying subtle energy, potential energy, scalar energy, is easily disturbed. And because of the diet we eat, because of the stress we're exposed to, because of the electromagnetic pollution we're exposed to. So the healing approach here is to work at the most fundamental energy and then let the body work the energy out and produce a healing effect.
Right. And one of the other things as well that I found interesting with some of the research was, the idea of earthing and grounding. And, you look at the average person, they get up in the morning and they put their shoes on, they go in, they climb into a car, or they jump on a bus, train, or otherwise. And they get to the office, they've walked along the pavement to the office and up the stairs, and they're on the 22nd floor. And their physical body is actually away from the earth, and that we actually evolved with our feet, our bare feet engaged with the earth, and the iron flow from the earth through the feet and the body help maintain this earthing and really as an antioxidant benefit as well. Can you maybe comment about why this is so important?
Well, earthing energy is another kind of energy. The energy of the earth, as you say, is particularly healthy and good for you. And one of the reasons that is because unlike the frequency of our electromagnetic fields and power lines, which turned out to be a bad frequency, nature was much smarter, knew that the energy of the entire earth, the energy field that we live in nature, should be a beneficial frequency, right? So God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, knew that 7.8 hertz is a very good frequency for the body. So they designed the whole geomagnetic field of the earth, the Gaia energy of the earth that you're talking about, that you can get in touch with when you walk barefoot, is 7.8 hertz. So that's why grounding is so beneficial. There's been several studies now showing that 7.8 hertz is a beneficial frequency.
So that's really the Schumann resonance or near enough. Yeah. And from what I understand, the brain and the heart operate in a similar bandwidth. Would that be right?
Yes, exactly. And for the brain, it's an alpha frequency, and alpha frequencies, when the brain oscillates at 7.8 hertz, at that frequency, it produces a very mellow state, very relaxed state, and very consciously aware state at the same time. It's like a meditative state.
Interesting. And that's why obviously just going for a walk on the beach barefoot, particularly, or in the park barefoot, can be relaxing, calming, or even just clearing of stress from the body as well. So I just want to move on to some of the other tests that you did earlier on, particularly with the Resonate, the medallion. You did some cell culture studies. Can you maybe expand on some of the testing that you did?
Yeah, you're talking about the DNA testing, I think.
Yes, please.
Because sometimes I use cells in tissue culture, sometimes I use molecules, but I like to work at a very basic level, and in the sense that I'm working with the individual components that make up the human body. The human body is so complicated, and in the human body, in addition to all these biochemical components, you've got all kinds of energies that we were talking about before, and on top of that, you've got the energy of the mind and the intention of the person, which can have a very profound effect. And that makes the system so complicated that what I do is I take individual cells or individual molecules from the body and study how they respond to energy. And in this case, the experiment I did was with human DNA in a test tube. And the human DNA has the ability to conduct electricity. Believe it or not, electrons can flow from one end of the molecule to the other end of the molecule. Electrons can flow right down the central channel, and electrons can hop along this individual strands. So this is a phenomenon that's well established, and it's known that the better DNA can conduct electrons, the healthier it is, in the sense that it can heal itself better after it's been wounded. So self-healing of DNA is directly linked to the conductivity. The more conductivity, the more self-healing goes on. And that's what I measure. I measure the electrical conductivity of DNA in a solution in a test tube. So the experiment was, of course, you measure the electrical properties before and after exposure to different kinds of energies. And in this experiment, it was the energy radiating from the pendant itself. The pendant, as I said, is crystal, and it radiates an energy field. When you wear that thing, it's radiating an energy field, and that energy field resonates with your DNA and improves its function because it increases its electrical conductivity. And that's something that I was able to measure in the lab. And and what I did was I did it kind of before and after the product was treated by Dr. Sandra Rose Michaels' technology. And
Right,
there
so,
was,
sorry, continue on.
yeah, and there was about a 30% increase in conductivity that is due to the presence of the scalar energy infused into the actual product.
Like that's really quite significant, 30% improvement in the conductivity. So when we have identified here that increases obviously cellular energy, can you explain also about what is referred to as the transmembrane potential as well, and what that means in terms of nutrient uptake or toxin elimination?
Well, the transmembrane potential is a very fancy technical word, Chris. We shouldn't be using technical terms like that. So what that refers to, it's a measure of the electrical properties of the cell, of the membrane around the cell or around the nucleus of the cell. Mm-hmm. So it turns out that all these membranes are electrically charged. They're made up of components with lipids that have an electrical charge. They're positive at one end and negative at the other end, and they form a membrane. And there it turns out that the electrical properties of the membrane are very key and fundamental to the health of the overall cell and the function of the cell. Like in parallel to the DNA work I just described, now we're talking at the cellular level, and the energy, particularly the electrical energy of the membrane that protects the cell from the environment. And that's critical and very well known to be damaged by electromagnetic fields in the environment. And one of the experiments that I think Dr. Sandra did was to show that that parameter was strengthened by the energy infused into the product. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is where, having the product on or around your body is definitely, can you explain what it would actually do? So if you were to, let's say, wear the product as a medallion or have it in your pocket, but physically close to your body, explain what are the benefits there?
Well, one of the main benefits, actually, there are a lot of benefits. But one of the main benefits is what we were talking about in terms of protecting the body from electromagnetic pollution. Because in essence, what it does is it strengthens the energy field of the body that we were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. And that, as I said earlier, is that it's the interface between outside energies and the inside biochemistry. So the more you strengthen that, the more your body is protected from harmful electromagnetic fields. I mean, right. This scalar technology, it turns out to be remarkably effective. It was first discovered by a scientist from Europe who made a device, and people who were so sensitive to electromagnetic fields, they would go into seizures when they go under or near a power line. And then they wore the much earlier version of the medallion, and they could just walk right by a power line and be perfectly fine and have no seizures at all. So it's quite effective at reducing the harmful effects of electromagnetic fields. And there are many, many other products, benefits. We could have to go into them, one by one. It strengthens the immune system, et cetera, et cetera. But if we have time, we could go into that in more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess just from a practical everyday application, we've got water, food, skincare, or sleep. Can you maybe comment what happens when you put the medallion near water, or how that could be of benefit for hydrating the body?
Okay, well, I actually did a study on that. And in this case, there's no molecules in there. It's just water itself, which of course is the carrier of all molecules in the body. And I measured in this particular experiment the electrical conductivity of the water itself. Water also conducts electricity. The plasma in our body is 90% water. So increasing the conductivity of water would increase the conductivity of the blood, and it would make it a more efficient carrier of the nutrients. So it turns out that when you put water on top of, I think I used 3 medallions just to make sure I had enough energy to actually physically change the water, so I could measure an alteration in its properties. I just add the water on top of 3 medallions, and there was about a 30% increase in the conductivity of the water. So that's the water.
So, yep.
And then we've done similar experiments with food, but I haven't done anything with skincare.
That's okay. But when we're talking about just the general principle of the medallion being able to be next to water, where you can, I call it just charging my water or charging my food.
Right.
I've noticed that even with even a glass of wine, you can actually taste a slight change in the wine, where it kind of smooths it out more so. But with the hydration or water, the water becomes better for you. Would that be accurate, and why?
Well, the water has more energy in it, if you will. It has more electrical energy. The energy is flowing through it better. It's acting as a better conduit. So in that sense, you're introducing and water is the carrier of the energy. Not only does water carry the chemicals and the nutrients and the vitamins in our body, but it also carries the energy in our body, as we were talking about earlier. So the two got to go hand in hand. Putting more energy in the body, whether it's directly or through acupuncture points or through drinking the water, the net result is beneficial effect is to increase the energy of the body.
Fabulous. So, the application of being able to wear it as a necklace, put it in your pocket, or even place it on a site. I'm just going to skip back to the last slide there, which was with sleep. Can you explain any potential benefit for sleep, like just placing it under your pillow, or potentially even a couple of medallions? I've heard there's even a configuration where you could put a medallion underneath the corner of each mattress corner, and then one in the center, and one under your pillow, that they can actually help you as far as sleep is concerned. Is there any comment on that?
Well, so it turns out that the kind of scalar energy that Dr. Rose Michael uses has a very broad spectrum of frequencies in it. We talked about the frequencies earlier, and that's one of the unique advantages of this particular technology in the Resonate. So that we know that sleep is a function of the particular neurotransmitters in your brain. And we now know that certain electromagnetic fields at certain frequencies can resonate with different neurotransmitter systems in the brain. So it's very likely that one of the frequencies stored in the medallion being radiated from the product will actually affect the brain and balance the neurotransmitters and give you a better night's sleep. Very reasonable hypothesis and very likely to happen. And I think you guys have anecdotal clinical data that is the case. A lot of people feel they get a better night's sleep, and that would be one explanation.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the key things with the Resonate is there's so many different applications of use in the day-to-day life. All you're doing is you're giving the body a reference point to stay strong in the presence of man-made frequencies, and potentially just give it another level of support. And I say it's like fortifying the body against harmful or disharmonious frequencies, and that's really whether you wear it as a necklace, put it in your pocket, or as a pain. So just any last comments as far as the Resonate's concerned as a product and as a device for getting well and staying well?
Well, I did want to reiterate what you had said earlier, that the magnitude of the effect that I was able to measure is pretty significant. Most other energy devices that I've tested and most other energy platforms, if you will, that I've tested don't produce such a large increase in the conductivity. In fact, I should share that some devices actually inhibit the conductivity. and weaken the product. But this effect is quite robust, and therefore, in principle, should have a very profound effect on the overall health of human bodies.
Fabulous. I mean, realistically, I think that anybody, if they've got a pulse and they're breathing, is a good idea to, you know, put one around their neck or in their pocket, and certainly for kids today as well. I think it's essential.
Oh, well, kids, well, there you're raising a very good point that we should reiterate, elaborate on. That children are particularly sensitive to electromagnetic fields in the environment because their nervous system is still growing, or their whole body is still growing. And during the active growth cycle, there's so many more things that could go wrong, and you know the body has to be focused on growing and healing, not on recovering from damage to, you know, some energy in the environment. So children are very more sensitive to electromagnetic fields, and therefore need this technology even more than adults.
Yeah, it's a great comment there, because you know a lot of data would suggest that kids' behavior could be impacted, but in real terms, there's also a high probability that electrosensitivity is part of you know the cause, because where there's stress on the body, then that stress is going to lead to distress, and ultimately at a true physiological level, oxidative stress and inflammation. So it's one could lead to the other. To lead to the other is almost like a cascade of or spiraling, negative spiral, if you will. So I'm really very mindful of children today and their use of electronics as being kind of like another appendage that they're going to sleep with them at night, and the behavioral challenges that could be associated with not only just social media, but just being around technology as a way of living, a way of education, a way of exposure, more so than we've ever been before. And there's, I think, grave implications that we need to be mindful of. And I consider that the Resonate is more peace of mind as a technology. We know that there's health benefits, but we can't underestimate the importance of peace of mind, particularly for parents. If you've got children and that's just the way they are, I'd rather have them wearing the medallion than not, as a point of reference as well. Dr. Glen Rein there on our advisory board, and certainly been an absolute pleasure to have a discussion about Resonate. All we'd encourage you to do is to talk to the person who introduced you to the product and take a closer look. For peace of mind, it's a fabulous investment and a versatile tool to incorporate into your wellness approach to life. Thank you very much. Have a great evening, great day, wherever you may be.